All right. Well, speaking of seeing, one thing that you may see is text when you play video games. What? Video games aren't just for stupid people? Well, you might be wrong if you thought that. I actually attribute a lot of my literacy to playing games growing up. You know, I grew up with the Pokemons and the Zeldas, and quite frankly, if you can't read, you can't make it far in those games. So I think I want to make the case that video game literature exists in abundance, not just within the game, but also outside of the game. And the goal of this segment slash video today is to give the viewer sort of an intro to what the world of video game literature looks like. And when I say video game literature, I mean literally books, magazines, text-based things that you read outside of the game. That's including but not limited to things like strategy guides, magazines, art books, fan fictions, manga, collector's guides, and nonfiction books. So I got BioPhoenix with me here today, and I want to just kind of say, like, what's the point of video game literature? Why do we get books surrounding our video games, and what kind of value do they add?
Well, when it came to magazines and such, I mean, before the internet, that's kind of where you needed to go if you wanted to find out about tips and tricks and or find out about the next upcoming games for your console, or hell, even the next upcoming console, you kind of needed to know that back then. But even nowadays, I just think it's just cool just to be able to just read a bunch of random articles about games and just seeing the little screenshots. I don't know. I've always just liked that type of stuff. And then, for strategy guides, I mean, as again, before game FAQs, that's where you needed to buy these strategy guides if you wanted to get help to get through a game or all that type of stuff, or help figuring out what to do at certain parts.
Yeah, I don't even know what the last strategy guide I saw in stores was. I think it was for some 3DS game, but I couldn't even tell you which one it was. And they didn't really, with the last strategy guides I saw, they really were becoming bare bones. Like, they took kind of the fun out of it. Like you said, I really like looking at the pictures and stuff. I think it's an unfortunate thing for the kids nowadays. You're not really going to get to experience what that was like, because you're probably not playing retro games, unless your parents forcing you what to play and then what's happening. But, this is kind of like a whole world surrounding that used to surround our experience growing up with video games that I think is missed.
Yeah, I know one thing about with strategy guides that I liked was that, well, not only did it help you with the game, I think that's the most important part of why you buy a strategy guide, but also a lot of them did have good artwork in them, or really cool layouts to the way how they displayed the information. I remember I used to have one from Mario Sunshine. Yeah, I bought the strategy guide before I had the game. I know, what the hell am I thinking? But but I did, because I was like, oh, there's a Mario book, I have to buy it. And yeah, and I remember the way how they laid out everything, and the way that the maps look on all the different all the different levels that you go to, they all looked really cool in that. I forget the company that made that strategy guide. It wasn't the ones you have listed here. It wasn't Prima. It wasn't Bradley. I think it was started with a V. I'll know what the logo looks like if I see it, but yeah, I also remember they came with posters too, which was also cool. So that made it worth it.
I don't know if this one still has it. Yeah, this is my Pokemon Emerald guide from when I was a kid. It had a poster set in it of Rayquaza versus, or no, it was Kyogre versus Groudon in this big battle. It was pretty cool. But yeah, growing up with this was really helpful, because Pokemon, even though it appears kind of user friendly, is complicated. There's so many aspects, and then with Gen 3, what this introduced was natures and breeding. It wasn't introduced here, but it was just another element. So when you look, not only does it give you the game walkthrough with cool pictures that relate to the area where you are, but it gives you the entire Pokemon Dex. It tells you every TM that a monster could learn. It tells you what their stats are like, if they evolve, what it's weak and strong against, what its types are. and its abilities. Like it's just a wealth of information, and I think it also speaks to the complexity of games back then. They weren't like they're really straightforward now. Like a Pokemon game that you play now is going to handhold you to death, but like back then, like those I don't really feel like the game just gave you everything. You had to work for it.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, granted, I mean, like, the games were still pretty easy back then, I feel like, because, you know, like, if I could beat that game when I was, like, 8 years old, when I was barely able to read, I don't think the game was that hard. But with that being said, though, like, you know, I still died a lot, and, you know, I still had to learn a couple things, but I got through it, so... But yeah, no, like, Pokemon, that guide did look really cool. I never owned the Pokemon guides back then. I wish I did, but I just, you know, like, we couldn't go out and go buy, like, a bunch of guides for every game I had, you know?
So the Mario Sunshine one is one that you owned. Were there any other strategy guides that you liked growing up or even collecting now?
The other one that I have, this one I actually still have. Unfortunately, the Mario Sunshine one, I have no idea what happened to it, which sucks because I wish I still had it. But the one that I know I still have, that's also made by the same people that did the Mario Sunshine one, was Digimon World 3. Ooh. Which is funny because I don't even own that game either, but I rented it, so I did make use of the guide for that when I did play it a bit, and that's a game I really want to go back and play because I never beat that game back in the day because, like I said, I rented it, so I couldn't keep it for very long. But yeah, I remember that one was cool. Like I remember I always used to like look through like all like the list of different Digimon that they had, and looking through like how they looked like in the game. It was cool.
Yeah, I think those kind of like collector ones, like those lend themselves really well to the strategy guides. I do find sometimes I need them for some of these older RPGs in like the PS1 or SNES era. I used one for Chrono Cross. I've used some for the Dragon Quest. For NES games like Zelda, the first Zelda, I have a strategy guide that I'm looking forward to using.
Yeah. Oh, actually, this is something you would appreciate, but one of the very first games that I did use a guide for, and I actually was able to beat the game, was actually the very first Dragon Quest, Dragon Warrior. Yeah, on NES, yeah, because when I got that game, it actually came with, like, the little strategy guide. And, oh no, I think I packed it already. I thought I still had it in here, but... No, it was the, like, it's in, like, the same size as a manual, and, you know, it has, like, a picture of just, like, a helmet and a sword on, like, an edge of a cliff, yeah. And, yeah, I used that guide to help me beat that game back then, so it was kind of cool.
Sweet deal. Dragon Quest down. Let's go.
Yeah, it's the only one I ever beat, but I'll be honest, I don't think I would have been able to do it without that guide.
Oh, yeah. It's a cryptic game, so you made the right move. One other thing that I used to love growing up, and I still do, is my video game magazines. So, you know, I used to really be into this idea of video game journalism and like reading about games that are coming out, review scores, you know, breakdowns. And so growing up, I had the Game Informer subscription through GameStop. They used to deliver it to the house all the time. Nowadays, I try and get Game Informer through GameStop, and they default me to digital, and then I can never end up getting the frickin' things. But yeah, it was only like $15, $10 a year, and you get like a magazine every month. So I used to love going through Game Informer, just, you know, and reading reviews, seeing. I didn't even play half the games that were reviewed, but I also used to have Nintendo Power. I don't have most of those magazines anymore. That was, you know, beloved magazine series. And then recently I've gotten into Nintendo Force, which is sort of like a revival of Nintendo Power. What's your experience like with video game magazines?
Yeah, mine is, like, pretty basic stuff. It's just Nintendo Power. Like, I remember my parents actually gave me a subscription for it for, like, I think, like, 2-3 years or something crazy like that. And, yeah, I remember, Nintendo Power was good stuff. And then, of course, like, sometimes, like, I remember before when I got the subscription, like, in the early days, I just, like, bought them whenever I could. Mm-hmm. Because, you know, like, they always had, like, cool covers, and, you know, then, of course, you know, they'd talk about, like, different stuff, and I found out about some pretty interesting games through those, which was kind of, which is kind of cool. But yeah, outside of like Nintendo Power, because obviously that was the biggest one, was there was also a Game Pro. Do you remember that one?
I don't know if I've seen it.
Okay, that one, the one of the big things about that one is that all like the different like staff that were a part of making it, like they kind of made up their own little like character and their persona. So like for an example, like one of the reviewer guys was like he drew himself looking like a red dragon. So like every time you saw like his reviews, like it'd just be a picture of like a dragon. So like, you know, like and there's like a bunch of other like stuff like little like stuff like that was kind of amusing, but yeah, very similar to Nintendo Power. You know, they just covered like random ass games that were coming out, or they reviewed stuff, and then they, you know, there was a lot of cool like little advertisements that they had in there, and yeah, so reading some of those reviews, like, you know, back in the day, like, you know, it was kind of like whatever, right? But now when I like look back on them, some of them like were kind of interesting, and then there were some that were very head scratching. I'm not gonna lie. Like I remember there was one I read. Like, there's this one that I actually found at a thrift store that, like, I didn't own back then, but I was just, like, looking through it just for, like, you know, to see what was mentioned here. And I remember I saw one where someone reviewed, what was it? I think it was Xenogears, and they, like, gave it a really bad review, and I'm just like, wow. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, you gotta wonder sometimes. I used to wonder, too, like, are certain companies that are AAA buying out the magazines because they're giving them such high scores? And, I felt that way recently too. And then I feel like there's like a bias. Like if you're getting a Nintendo magazine, then the Nintendo games are probably going to rate pretty high. I do find that a little bit with the Nintendo Force, but, I can kind of forgive it. It's kind of a mom and pop style magazine. I mean, I've written stuff that got, put in here once or twice.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and I think that's what I like about this too. Like, I like feeling like I'm supporting video game journalism nowadays, especially with print stuff like disappearing.
Yeah. No, I hear you on that. I do think that is pretty cool, and I do like magazines. It's just unfortunate I just don't go out and buy them anymore because I just never see anything worth a shit.
Oh yeah. I think being on the subscription model helps, and I think as a kid that's exciting. It's getting like a magazine delivered to your doorstep every month.
Oh yeah, no, it was cool. It's like, oh my god! And then, oh yeah, and the other thing that was cool about Nintendo Power that I completely forgot was, the posters were always cool.
Mm.
Yeah, I actually still have a lot of mine.
Did you get a cool one from Nintendo Power?
Yeah, I've gotten a few. I gotten a lot. I mean, of course, I got like a lot of Sonic ones. I gotten like, I remember one of my favorite ones was like it was like a Mario one, but the art style was like really like bizarre and crazy. Like it kind of reminded me of one of those children books. I forget the name of it right now. What was it? The Stinky Cheese Man? Do you remember that?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, either way, yeah, like it kind of had like a really like surreal like art style, and it was like really cool looking. I always really liked that one. And then I got like I remember like one time I even got like this huge like Avatar poster, like like the movie from James Cameron.
Yeah.
And then the poster was like huge, like it was like ginormous.
Sweet deal. These give you posters, but the only problem is they're folded. So there's no getting the crease out of them, like the 4-prong crease.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, if they didn't do that, I'd use them more. Let's talk about art.
Oh,
books.
Actually,
go ahead.
Before we move on, I want to mention something real quick about gaming magazines that is funny.
Okay.
Years ago, when I was a kid, I used to make my own magazine. Like, I actually, like, drew out, like, everything on a piece of paper. I actually have a video of it on my channel. It was called like childhood stuff I made or something, and I made like my own gaming magazine, and it was called X Gamer or something. And yeah, it was like really dumb, and everything was like poorly drawn, but it was hilarious to look back on. Like I was like, it's like, oh my god, like James Bond versus Dumbo the video game. Fuck yeah!
Dude, people would pay to read that.
Yeah. I just wanted to mention that real quick because, you know, like when gaming magazines come up, I have to mention it's like, oh yeah, I made my own when I was like, what, like 9, 10?
Well, you heard it here first, folks. Ex gamer.
Yeah. And then I remember someone commented saying that like my magazine was better than X Play. I'm just like, damn straight.
Hell yeah. You won't get this kind of content there. Well, it's not so much literature based, but they are books, and you do get them a lot of times with video games. And so you can just buy them a lot of times too. But I do like art books. I think they add a level of like, you know, I don't know if you did this when you were a kid so much, but I definitely did was like drawing video game characters like in sketchbooks and stuff.
Yeah, I've tried.
Yeah, I'm not much better at it, but I liked looking at the art of video games. What's your experience like with video game art books?
Most of mine that I got are just from collector's editions, most of them. But I do have like a couple like around though. Actually most of the art books I have are honestly like stuff that are not even like video game related. But they usually are like have to do with like some sort of like artist that's in like our little realm of like, you know, nerddom. Like, for an example, like I have an art book of like the Yu-Gi-Oh! Where it's all like the bunch of like art of the cards. That's literally what it's called. Instead of heart of the cards, it's art
Art
of the cards.
cards.
Yeah, I know how creative. But yeah, like I have that, and then I have like oh, actually, I do have a Growlancer art book. I do remember that now. Yeah, I do have one of that's video game related, of course, because you know. That's Satoshi Yorishihara, one of my all-time favorite artists in the Japanese side of things. And yeah, like I said, most of the other ones I have, it was just because they came with the collector's edition. I was like, oh, cool, and you know, I always thought they were cool. But I would like to get more of them. It's just, you know, like some of the stuff that like I would love to get an art book for, it's either like really expensive or like the shit just doesn't exist.
Right. That makes sense.
Because I mean, like I would like, you know, there's no like Shadow Hearts or Deception art book, but if there was, I'd buy it.
That'd be cool. A deception art book. Oh my goodness. That'd be gruesome.
Yeah, but it'd be amazing.
Make it happen. Who's that? Tecmo?
Yeah.
Okay, my big one is the Dragon Quest illustrations. I've had it for a long time, but it covers like the entire chronology up to Dragon Quest 11. So yeah, celebrating 25 years of Dragon Quest. I want to say at that point. I think it's 30 now. 86. I don't know. It's getting there, but
Yep.
yeah. So I mean, I don't have much to say about art books. Like I have mine that come with the games, and I usually just leave them in the boxes. But you know, they still stand out. I usually look at them once or twice.
Oh yeah, no, I just like looking through them. Yeah, because you know, it's just nice just to be able to just open up a book and just look at artwork.
Yeah, agreed.
I don't know. It's like
I want to group these next two together because I think that probably makes the most sense. It's like fan fiction and or manga. Manga not necessarily being fan fiction, but you know, sometimes authors will write novels that are either based loosely or entirely on a video game, and sometimes they'll create a manga series out of them. So recently I read through like the Final Fantasy Memory of Heroes for Final Fantasy 1, which is basically a retelling of the first game, but it also retells the Final Fantasy 2 and 3. I just haven't played them, so I don't know as much about it, but that's pretty cool. I know Alex has talked about the Resident Evil novels that have been written, so those are pretty cool. I know like the Halo games, and I guess I don't know if you group Star Wars in this group, but you know that has its own
yep.
you know, novel series. Like there is a world of literature to consume alongside some games. I think that's pretty cool. Even the Zeldas have gotten you know, mangas produced off of them, Dragon Quest, and you know, freaking SMT. I know Persona has some, but I have the Raito one. So I do like reading, you know, some literature, whether it's fiction or manga, based on the text.
Yeah, actually, I do remember two things I can mention. Is that Well, first, one of the things I do remember is that I actually had a Zelda and a Mario comic from back in the day. And the Mario comic, I actually still have it, although the condition is not the best. But is of this one right here.
Oh wow, it's classic.
Yeah, yeah, I actually have that still, and yeah, it's funny because it's like a Mario like beach episode, which is hilarious. But yeah, no, I
Classic.
actually remember reading this now, and yeah, it was kind of funny and like goofy and stuff. And also, I remember at the end of it, it had a little short about Metroid, which was interesting.
Hmm. Okay.
Yeah, and then I remember there was the Zelda one I had too. Maybe I should try to look for that one real quick because that one was kind of cool looking. Okay, not trying to find that. Oh, yeah, this is the one I had for Zelda. Okay, it was pretty easy to find. It was this one.
Oh wow, that's fancy.
Yeah, the artwork in it was actually really cool too. Like I actually think like I mean the artwork of the Mario one is like pretty good. You know, it looks exactly how it should. But I find this one like oh man, like I remember I like as a kid like after reading that and like I had like a dream where they made like a whole fledged like anime series that looked like this, and it would have been awesome.
Yeah, that looks cool, man.
Yeah, those are ones I do remember reading, and then yeah, like they're just comics, you know. But I'm trying to. Oh, I know I did read the Ocarina of Time manga online like ages ago. I remember that
Mm.
was kind of decent.
Yeah, it's pretty decent. It's mostly just kind of like a abridged version of the game. That's how I feel. Like a
Yeah,
lot of
pretty
these
much.
are, you know. But still, that's cool to absorb it in a different medium.
Yeah, no, it's kind of interesting. And then yeah, I know I told you like a bit earlier there, but but there is like a Mario novel that I remember I got from a Scholastic book order from school. I wish I can find it on here, but I haven't yet. But
Mm.
yeah, I remember that was kind of funny.
Gotta open up that Scholastic account again.
Yeah, I remember Scholastic book orders from school. That was the shit. They even like had video games too.
My school didn't really push it. I know
Oh
they
wow,
had it,
really?
but I don't really. Yeah, I don't remember getting books from Scholastic, but I remember it existing.
Oh, okay, because I was gonna say like, wow, like man, they robbed your childhood, man.
A little bit. Yeah. Maybe I robbed my own child. I don't know.
No, it's all good. But I mean, hey, like, you know, back in school when you had the book fair and like the Scholastic like order sheet would come in and you'd like beg your parents to like, oh, get me this thing, and yeah, it was a good time.
Sweet. I'm going to group these last two together. I think that there's also a decent, and this is not really as much for children, I don't think. I think for like adults, this is more useful. But I mean, like, if you like, one thing I find as an adult is like, if I'm not reading something I'm enjoying, I'm not reading. I'm not reading a book. So one thing that usually helps get me back into the zone for reading is reading about something that I like, which is video games. I really like video games. So, I've read a couple books that are nonfiction books or like how-to books that I think are pretty helpful. I think collector's guides have become popular, like how to collect for the NES or the Sega Genesis. I don't really invest as much into those, but I know they're popular right now. I like
Oh
reading
yeah.
memoirs about people in the industry. So one of them was called like Power Up about this video game journalist in like Japan or something. That was pretty neat. And then I read the Reggie memoir. I wasn't a fan, but I read it.
Yeah.
And then I'm almost done with it, so a review will come up soon. But I'm reading through Pikachu's Global Adventure: The Rise and Fall of Pokemon. So, which is a bunch of nonfiction essays about like different aspects of Pokemon. So, I mean, you
Okay.
do have to kind of like hunt for some of this stuff, but I do see literature around video games and about its impact that is pretty interesting. What kind of nonfiction have you seen around video games?
Um, shit. There was one. that well, okay, actually I think this is like sort of fiction, but not really. But there's a book I remember I was interested in reading called J-Pod. It was by Douglas Copeland. He's a Canadian author. And I remember, like, back in the day, I remember I used to see that cover art with, like, the Lego people on it, and I was like, oh my god, Legos! But, anyway, so what the book is about is that it's about, like, people that work at, like a small gaming company. And apparently it's very, like, satirical about it, too. Like, it kind of talks about, like, the whole, like the ups and downs about it and all that kind of stuff. But it, like I said, it is fictional, but it does like it does feel like it could have been like real though, from what I've heard. But like I said, but it's made to be more like funnier. And I've always wanted to read it, like, you know, ever since I got into reading it, but just, you know, I just haven't found a decent copy of it lately. But, you know, it's one that does kind of come to my mind that's kind of interesting. And the other thing, too, is that this book, I think, was written, like, 2005. So this is, like, talking about, like, when indie gaming was, like, literally, like, very, 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 very small. So it'd be kind of interesting to kind of go back and read that and see like, oh wow, like this is what making a video game was like back in like those times.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be cool. That's well, that's one thing I think I'm struggling with is like with the Power Up or with this Pikachu's Global Adventure. Like this is early 2000s. Like I feel like there are more up to date things I could be reading about video games, and like this one feels a bit dated, which, you know, save the, you know, analysis or whatever. But, you know, I would like to see more, you know, contemporary literature around video games. Maybe I just haven't like gone to the bookstore and really like looked into it as much, but something I want.
They're around, but yeah, I don't know, because, you know, I'll be honest, I don't really like look into the nonfiction section. I really don't.
Yeah, I get it. Well, that's it for the types of video game literature. What does it make you think? Like, what value does video game literature have to you or in general?
Well, I think it's cool. I mean, it definitely has, like, fallen out of, like, my main site, I guess, because, you know, like I was saying earlier, like, you know, I don't really go out and buy magazines anymore because I never see them around, and, you know, like, with gaming guides, like, as again, that's kind of fallen off now, and then with all that. But despite that, though, like, of course, I still appreciate them, and, you know, I don't mind going back and just, you know, like looking through them for nostalgia's sake. You know, it's like looking through those old Wish books. Like, it's just fun just to see like the type of shit that's like, oh, I could have gotten this thing for like $50 back then. Well, now that shit's worth like 200.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't really think of it from a nostalgia perspective. Like, am I doing this to be nostalgic? Maybe somewhat. I think too, like, there is a utility in the lack of distraction while reading it for me, which is why I wouldn't attribute it personally for me to only nostalgia. Because when I'm on a browser, I can easily get distracted from reading a guide to a video game, and I lose my place. So like I'm playing the game one day and then I'll put it down for a bit, and then I have to remember to Control F and look for like this part of the guide, or like, you know, and I find that's not the most seamless way for me to play like an RPG. So for me, it's more of like with the guide thing, it's more of a utility thing. For the nonfiction stuff and for the manga, it's just for fun. I don't think I was ever really that into manga, but I do think it like adds a layer of immersion into the world and like maybe a different perspective on characters that I hadn't previously considered. And I think it's just kind of like a nice bonus thing. Like maybe it is somewhat nostalgia for the game, you know, and the world, and wanting to get more out of it. So I could see that.
No, yeah. And I do, another thing I wanted to mention real quick about the manga stuff, but I've heard that apparently the Twilight Princess manga is, like, super good, though.
Really? The one that's, like,
yeah,
from the same... Because I have I read Oracle of Seasons Ages. I read the Majora's Mask Link to the Past one. I read the Ocarina of Time. I thought they were good, but like I felt like they were really abbreviated. But you saying it's good?
Well, from what I've heard. Now, I haven't read it myself yet. I do want to read them because, like that is like one of my favorite 3D Zelda games.
Sure.
But yeah, I have heard from a lot of people that yeah, like apparently like the Twilight Princess manga like actually like really expands upon like almost like just as much as like the game itself.
Wow,
and like
that's
and there's a lot of like character development and Link actually has a lot of like dialogue in it. So that for that alone, I'm just like, wow, that kind of makes me like want to check it out because that actually sounds like it would be dope. But yeah.
Wow. Okay. Good to know. I've never finished Twilight Princess, so it would be a bit in the spoiler territory for me. But it is one that I think I'd like to get the full set for the Akira Himikawa text. So I'll keep that on the radar.
Yeah, no, it's been on my radar too. I just haven't really got an opportunity to just pick it up and get them. But yeah, I definitely do want to for sure. Because like I said, not only it's one of my favorite Zelda games, but just the fact that I've heard a lot of people say it's like one of the best, like one of the best like Zelda mangas you can get. I'm just like, wow, like for real?
Yeah, really. Well, it makes sense to me because the only reason it would make sense is if they take that darker, more adult theme with Link. I feel like they still make him very bubbly in the other ones, which I don't know if that fits. Like, it does fit the tone, like the more charming tone of like Link's Awakening or like Oracle of Ages, but it would not fit Twilight Princess. So that would be my concern, is that they apply that bubbly like character to him in that one. But if they have like an edgy Link, that would be cool.
Yeah, no, like I said, I heard that they added like a lot of like cool stuff to it, and yeah, it would be great. But yeah, of course, in your case, I would recommend just playing through the game first because I think it's great. But
Oh, I have to put on my Wii U again. Jesus.
Oh, right.
Well, I don't know. Maybe I know that GameCube one's like over $100 now. So, but
yeah, the joy.
As for me, I do have a couple books on my radar. I want to read the Satoru Iwata interviews.
That'd be kind of interesting.
They made a book that like compiles all of the interviews, but after coming off the Reggie one where he's basically slamming Iwata like subtly, like not really saying it, but it really feels like underhanded. I'm going in on Reggie right now, okay?
Go for it. I approve.
Okay. Yeah, it feels like he's saying like he only focuses on his moments of like where he convinced Iwata not to do something or do something differently, and then it ended up succeeding. So it doesn't really like make Iwata shine in the best light. Although I know Iwata has accomplished a lot at Nintendo, so I'd be interested to see the other side of the coin, I guess.
Yeah, there's that, and well, like I know a lot of people probably don't want to hear this, but I'll be honest with you, I don't think Reggie was that like great of like as a businessman. Like there were some things he did do right for sure, but I felt like a lot of it in the long run, like I felt like it kind of hurt like Nintendo in certain aspects. Like the fact that he like denied like a lot of like games coming out over here, I thought was like completely BS. Like that's why like Xenoblade and Last Story and all that like they didn't want to bring those games over there. That's why they were published by Xseed, because they were like, oh hey, if Nintendo won't do it, we'll freaking show them and do it. And then look now with Xenoblade now, like that series is like huge. So
yeah, well, he did Nintendo a number, but Nintendo will always be fine. So that's the thing.
Oh yeah, of course. Like I mean, they have to like really fuck up like bad, but like a multiple times over and over to get like really low. But but like what I'm saying there is that I do think that like Reggie, like I think a lot of people overrate him because of the memes of the My Body's Ready. Like I think a lot that's like kind of like it's like okay, like we get it, he's funny, but outside of that, like he's not impact, like the be all.
Well, that's the other thing too about the Reggie thing is like I feel like a lot of people don't really know him outside of that, so that's why it was like interesting to read the book.
Yeah.
Anyways, the Reggie memoir is a different story. The guide is only in Japanese, but I would like the Dragon Quest VII guide. I don't know, just for collecting sake. I think that would be cool. I do want the Akira Himikawa manga set. I'd be interested in that. And you know, I don't know. I was getting into Astro Boy recently. I know it's not like from a video game. It's from
Well, I mean, it
you know,
inspired a video game, close enough.
yeah,
Actually, there is a really good Astro Boy video game on the Game Boy Advance that's really good.
Omega Factor.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that was pretty solid. Um, I might want to get the NES guidebook for Castlevania 2.
Oh,
So I think that could be interesting. And wasn't there a book on console wars?
there's probably a few. Actually, I remember a few weeks ago at my thrift store, I did see like a copy of a book there called The Console Wars. But I don't know if it's the one you're thinking of or it's like some other random bullshit. But yeah, I remember like I was looking through and I'm like, oh, that's interesting to see that here.
Hmm. Yeah, so those are just a few books that I'm interested in reading.
All right, that's cool. Yeah. As
Okay.
for me, I mean, you know, a lot of the books I'm wanting to read are basically like, you know, stuff I know you wouldn't be into.
Try me.
Well, like, you know, like, for example, like, I want to read my next Michael Crichton book at some point. I don't know which one I want to read, but there's one I'm thinking of. There's a couple I've been thinking about. Like, there's Congo, there's Eaters of the Dead, and then there's also Pirate's Latitude, which
This
was the
is
last
not
book that he.
video game literature, right? It's just books.
Yeah, just books, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah.
I do want to close the segment, and we could still talk about that. On just video game books.
Okay, sorry about that. I thought you meant books in general. Okay, well, like, yeah, but those are just some examples of just random shit. But yeah, when it comes to video game books, I mean, the only other, I mean, you know, like I was saying earlier, like I do want to check out the Twilight Princess mangas, and I don't know, like I've heard like the Persona mangas like aren't bad, but I'm just not like crazy about like going on my way to like read them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how much you know about those.
I don't know. I didn't even watch the anime.
Okay, well, I mean, I've heard the Persona 5 anime wasn't like super great, but I really liked the one from Persona 4. I thought that one was good, mainly because like it kind of like helped with the whole streamline of the beginning part. Because I feel like that's the biggest flaw of that game is that it takes like fucking like 6 hours just to actual like get to do anything. Where in the anime, it's like 2 episodes. And it's like, all right, there you go.
Like I played both 4 and 5, so if I was trying to relive them, like that might be a decent. Either one might be a decent way, like the manga or the anime.
Yeah.
If you don't have 100
Yeah, I would say
hours
the
to
Persona.
kill.
Yeah, I would say the Persona 4 anime was actually good. Like, I would even recommend that to people who haven't even played the game and don't have like the time to play it because, like I said, like I think it does like do a good job of what they had to work with.
Nice.
But yeah, as for like any other like gaming books related books, yeah, like I can't really think of like one off the top of my head, like outside of what I mentioned there, because you know most like because I can't really think of any like nonfiction books as I haven't really looked into that much. And then for manga, like yeah, like there's only like so many that do come out.
Well, that's fair. I mean, like it's not necessarily like your preferred genre anyway. So
Yeah, well, the other thing too is I maybe it's just because I just prefer playing them.
right.
Not that I have a problem with reading. It's just, I mean, obviously I don't. But it's just, you know, like I just don't like think about like actually like, you know, like reading about them. I guess. I mean, I do like visual novels. Does that count?
It's half the battle.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll turn it over to the viewers at this point. Let us know in the comments below what video game related books have you consumed, enjoyed, are looking forward to, or would recommend.
Yepers.